là.
No, it's too late. Really?
Et puis la chambre ici.
That's fine. You can record.
What happened this week? What happened this week? The most common question that we saw on our channel and on the internet was, how the heck was the government able to actually pass a bill with the House seized? So, we were asking this question as well, and we were waiting to see what happened. And the answer is it's complicated. So,
as most things in Parliament.
So, the first things first, in the GST tax holiday was a normal bill. There wasn't anything special about it. It's the same as it's the same process that Bill C-63 has to go through, that Bill C-11 had to go through, that Bill C-18 had to go through. Bill C-63 is not going to be passed before the end of the session.
No, it doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell. Yeah.
So, in terms of Bill C-78, which is what this was, it had to go through the House. Now, the catch was how were they going to do this with the House seized? Now, what everybody assumed is that the only way they would be able to do that is that if the Liberals put forth a motion of closure and had the NDP support. And what that would have done is terminated permanently the question of privilege that the Conservatives had regarding the SDTC scandal, and then they would have had to put forth a motion of closure on the Stephen Anderson question of privilege that was right after that. So, what happened? Did they do that? No, they did not. The NDP said, we are not going to do that, which is very interesting. So the NDP didn't want to appear to be siding with the Liberals and getting rid of the accountability of the corruption on the SDTC scandal and allowing Stephen Anderson to skate scot-free.
Well, because they voted on the first one, right? The NDP voted to have the Liberals hand over all those documents to the RCMP.
All the opposition parties supported that.
Yep.
So, what they did is they agreed to a motion of adjournment. What is that, and how is that different than a motion of closure? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, you want me to read the definition?
Sure.
Okay, I go into the Green Book. So motion to adjourn the debate. This is on page 550 of the Green Book. The purpose of this motion is to set aside temporarily the consideration of a motion. It can be used as a dilatory tactic or for the management of the business of the House. If the House adopts a motion, quote, that the debate be now adjourned, end quote, then the debate on the original motion stops and the House moves on to the next item of business. However, the original motion is not dropped from the order paper. It remains on the House agenda and is put over to the next sitting day when it may be taken up again. Thus, the adoption of a motion to adjourn the debate has the effect of delaying further debate on a motion on that day. If the motion to adjourn the debate is defeated, then the debate on the original motion continues.
So what's all that gobbledygook?
Emotional damage!
That was not emotional damage.
So what does that all mean? Pretty much that if they have debate A going on, then they put forward a motion to adjourn the debate. That debate stops. Debate A stops, but it doesn't stop permanently. It's only taking a break. So then they'll debate motion B or bill B or whatever they happen to bring in its place. And then once that's completed, they go back to motion A.
And assuming that debate takes until the end of the day, then, so this is what happened. On Wednesday, they did first reading of Bill C-78. In order to do that, and we covered this in one of our previous videos, there was a motion to adjourn the question of privilege for the SDTC scandal, and then right after that, but 2 minutes later, there was another motion to adjourn the next question of privilege, because that one started right after, and then C-78 took precedence for the rest of the day. So they discussed that, that's fine. Then the next day happened, and then, as per the Green Book, the SDTC question of privilege started up all over again because it was the next sitting day. And then this is what happened.
Wow, there's a lot there to unpack. We started with what was SDTC, Green Slush Fund, then we went to overriding rights and freedoms and whether it should go to PROC, whether the documents should go to PROC. Mr. Speaker, here it is. Crimes were committed. $400 million was stolen potentially from the Canadian taxpayers. And that member wants to talk about rights and freedoms. What about the Canadians' rights and freedoms? What about the taxpayers' right to know what happened through unredacted documents being tabled? Those documents should be tabled. That is the right of every Canadian to know. What are these Liberals so afraid of that they won't table those documents unredacted?
Get the money back.
Reprise the debate, continuing debate. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I move, seconded by the member from Winnipeg North, that the debate now be adjourned.
Okay, so that's what happened on Thursday at the beginning of the day. So they adjourned the SDTC question of privilege. NDP sided with them. Off it went. What happened after that?
Resuming debate, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And on a point of order, I move, seconded by the member for Winnipeg North, that the debate now be adjourned.
They then adjourned the Stephen Anderson question of privilege. So that got them through the two questions of privilege debates that have been, or really the one, but the two of them that have been essentially tying up the House for the last 8 weeks or whatever it is now.
Because remember, a question of privilege always takes precedence.
Yep. So
and they had two of them lined up.
So that paved the way for C-78 to then have second reading. Now, the stages of a bill, it has to have first reading, second reading, goes to committee, reported from committee, third reading, and then once that passes, then it goes to the Senate. And then it goes through first reading, second reading, committee, report, third reading, and then receive royal assent. Those are the stages of a bill. So, how the heck did they get second reading, committee, and all of that done? Well, what they used was what is called in the UK, they call it a programming motion. But I'm going to let Tanya talk a little bit about some of this stuff through one of the resources that we actually had on Parleview.
So this was on our commons.ca, and it's a chart of different motions, different types of motions. The one that we are going to talk about is called the time allocation motion. And I'm going to read out of the Green Book for this one. It says the time allocation rule allows for specific periods of time to be set aside for the consideration of one or more stages of a public bill. The term time allocation suggests primarily the idea of time management, but the government may use a time allocation motion as a guillotine. In fact, although the rule allows the government to negotiate with opposition parties on the adoption of a timetable for the consideration of a bill at one or more stages, including consideration in committee and the consideration of Senate amendments, it also allows the government to impose strict limits on the time for debate. This is why time allocation is often confused with closure. While it has become the most frequently used mechanism for curtailing debate, time allocation remains a means of bringing the parties together to negotiate an acceptable distribution of the time of the House. So within that, there's 3 ways that they can do this time allocation. The first being all parties agree to it. So the government says, okay, we're going to be doing first and second reading today. We're going to be sending it to committee of the whole, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then we're going to be doing third reading tomorrow. And then everybody agrees to it and it's unanimous consent. Everybody's fine with it. The other way that they can do this is that the majority of the parties agree, which is what happened here. The NDP went along with it, so they had the majority vote. And then the other way, they can still put it through if there's no agreement. The third section of the rule allows the government to propose time allocation unilaterally. So they can do it even with no support.
So what's the whole purpose of time allocation? Well, what that allows them to do is basically, like Tanya said, you know, we're only going to allot, say, 3 hours for debate on second reading. Why would they do that? Well, the NDP told the Liberals, you're only going to get basically 1 day for this. So we're not going to support you on this past 1 day. So what the Liberals had to do is they had to essentially divide up chunks of time in the House to be able to get through the different stages of this bill so that they could, you know, follow the process and the standing orders so that the bill would be valid, because it has to go through these different stages. So they would say X amount of hours for second reading, X amount of hours for committee, and then we will vote on it. So that's basically how they were able to carve this up. So they spent, I believe it was all afternoon. I think it was around 1 o'clock. And then, you know, discounting question period until it was almost midnight, when they actually finished. So in order to do second reading and committee, when it doesn't actually go to committee, this is the next part that happened after when they were ready to essentially resume debate.
Je déclare la motion adoptée.
I declare the motion carried.
Pursuant to order made earlier today, the House will now proceed to the consideration of Bill C-78 at second reading stage. Orders of the day.
Government orders, government bills coming. Considération en deuxième lecture du projet.
Consideration at second reading stage of Bill C-78, temporary cost of living relief, affordability.
For Ms. Freeland, seconded by Madame Bibeau, moves that Bill C-78, an act respecting temporary cost of living affordability, be now read a second time and referred to the Committee of the Whole. Debate. The Honorable...
Okay, so that was a new one for us, referred to Committee of the Whole. What the heck was that? And then I'm like, wait a minute. Is that really what I think it is? And yes, it was what I thought it was. So what this means is that they go through second reading and there's X amount of time per the time allocation for them to actually debate. And that's where, you know, somebody stands up for 20 minutes. They read their speech, they take questions, and that's time delineated, and then the next person stands up. So basically they were keeping really tight time on the number of speakers and who was speaking and questions. Then what they did is they went to the Committee of the Whole, and the Committee of the Whole, do you have that, or?
I do not, actually. The Committee of the Whole is, instead of going to one of the standing committees, like let's say PROC or OGO, the Committee of the Whole is just the House, the MPs.
So what they end up doing is the rules of the House change for that particular period. So it's not rules of debate, rules of the House of Commons. They actually change to the rules of committee. So there's points of order and everything like that. And the speaker is no longer speaker. The speaker is the chair.
Chair, yeah. So instead of being in a small committee with maybe 20 people, it's the entire House.
So that all of a sudden is the committee stage. And because the House is the committee, then it doesn't need to actually file a report because the House has heard it through the Committee of the Whole. Told you it was complicated. So after that's done, that's technically the committee report. Then the bill doesn't necessarily need to be read for the third time because they've actually been talking about this all day. It's already been read. There's not really any need to reread it because there was no amendments and there was no changes. So then what happened? Well, then they voted.
Je désire informer la Chambre que la période de vote électronique.
The electronic voting period has ended. If any members were not able to vote, please use the raise hand function now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My app was not working, and so I'd like to cast my vote in favor of the motion.
Mr. Davies, yay pour.
Nothing important, just a contact.
Le bureau va maintenant compiler les résultats.
The table will now compile the results of the vote.
Yeas pour 176, 176. Nays contre 151, 151.
Je déclare la motion.
I declare the motion carried. Accordingly, pursuant to the order made earlier today, the bill is deemed referred to a committee of the whole, deemed considered in committee of the whole, deemed reported without amendment, deemed concurred in at report stage, and deemed read a third time and passed.
And that's how the vote went. So they voted on the concurrence of the report, the committee report, the second reading, and third reading, all at the same time. So they had one vote for all of that. So that's how they got this passed within one day. Basically 1 day. And it's almost... It's fascinating, but in a way it can be concerning that the government can pass something this quickly without going through proper committee stage.
Yeah, it's kind of terrifying that a bill can be forced through the House this quickly with little to no oversight as long as there's a majority. I don't think that they would pass anything nefarious through in this manner just because of the media attention that it would get. And I think all of those MPs who voted for it, their careers would be over. So I think something like this where, yes, it's not necessarily a good thing because you have all these small business owners who have to now try to figure out how the heck they're going to implement this. But it's not...
It's not taking away our freedoms.
Yeah, it's not taking away our rights. It's not spending money, right? It's not a confidence motion. It's not a supply bill. So something, I'll call it small, like this can be pushed through in this manner. I think anything else, the media would be on top of it.
But something else interesting happened right after the vote was done because... immediately Karina Gold called for the House to be adjourned. So then the House adjourned, and then this happened.
Not her. Step right back. All of you. Step.
We can film now.
All of you. Yeah, but you guys don't need to be standing over yelling at him. He came over to stand down.
Guys,
look in the mirror. Oh, look in the mirror. Why? Look in the mirror. And he's taking this in the house. He is taping this in the house.
I can.
No, it's too late. Really?
That's fine. You can record. That's all fine.
He's sitting down.
You're here for another month, you're gone. You guys are at his seat. This is my seat. You're right. This is his own seat. And they're telling Right.
And they're not point down in he is sitting down. They're not worth it. They're not worth it.
You're here for another month, you're gone. You guys are at his seat.
So ridiculous.
Man, Mr. Barrett played it really cool.
Well, I love how Greg Fergus was like trying to chastise Barrett, and Barrett's like, "This is my seat. They came over to me. This is my seat." So I guess the NDP didn't like that the Conservatives didn't support the GST rebate, and they also didn't like some of the things that they were saying during debate, and they came over and were like giving them crap for it. And then Lindsay Matheson got angry that one of the MPs was recording.
Okay, well, to be fair, and this is our understanding, number one, in the galleries, you're not even allowed a cell phone. You have to check it when you're downstairs. But when you're in the House, on the floor, we have been fortunate enough that our MP has taken us on the floor a couple times. And the rules were that we were permitted to take photos, but we were not allowed to record, like no video. So I don't know if that's different for the MPs because they are MPs, or if that's just the rules of the House, that there's no recording in the House. My guess is that it may be no recording because Parleview has the contract to record everything that goes on in the House. So there may be like some conflict with the contract, and that's why they don't permit recording. To be perfectly honest, I don't know. The MPs might be able to record, but I know we were not permitted to record.
Yeah. So anyhow, they didn't like that very much, but here's the thing, like the NDP are going to get mad at the Conservatives for not supporting this bill. Hello, Canadians are screaming for an election NDP. So what? If you guys vote against the non-confidence bill, is it okay for the Conservatives to come over and like surround you and then chastise you for not voting for that?